Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us at the Korea Society today for the latest installment of the US ROK New Economic Paradigm. My name is Sarah Oh, Business and Economics Program Associate, and we are thrilled to have you all here for what will surely be an insightful and timely conversation. Before we officially start, I'd like to hand over the mic to Tom Byrne, President and CEO of the Korea Society, to share his remarks and introduce the panelists for today.
Thanks, Sarah. So good afternoon and welcome to the Korea Society for our virtual audience here at 350 Madison Avenue in Midtown, New York City. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's special panel discussion, Unlocking Korea's Tech Potential, Strengthening U.S. Investment and Innovation. Thank you for joining us in what I think promises to be a timely and important conversation, and also one with a unique perspective, because we've had many programs on Korean investment into the U.S., but this is our first one on American investment into Korea. Korea's thriving tech industry, driven by global brands, cutting-edge innovation, and a world-class digital infrastructure, is drawing increasing significant volumes of foreign direct investment. The U.S.-Korea tech relationship in particular has become a vital channel for shared innovation, economic partnership, and strategic cooperation. The Korean government has made notable efforts to attract foreign entrepreneurship, offering incentives such as financial support, access to incubators, streamlined visa processes in collaboration with immigration authorities. These steps reflect Korea's aspiration to position itself as a global hub for innovation and investment. At the same time, despite strengths in market size, technological advancement, and talent, foreign entrepreneurs and companies often encounter obstacles in sustaining their businesses in Korea's digital economy. While the country's robust IT ecosystem remains a strong draw, especially for firms building tech hubs or accessing skilled human capital, foreign firms often cite difficulties navigating Korea's regulatory environment. According to the Business Confidence Survey published in March by 11 European chambers of commerce in Korea, many companies feel disadvantaged in comparison to domestic firms due to the complexity and inconsistency of regulations. The evolving policy landscape, especially the recent proposals for online platform regulations, particularly the Korea Fair Trade Commission's proposal issued last September, raises important questions about competitiveness, innovation, and fair market access. To explore these issues, we're honored to be joined by an outstanding panel of experts. Dr. Lila Nora Kiss, Senior Policy Analyst at the Schumpeter Project on Competitive Policy at Information Technology Innovation Foundation, a leading think tank for science and technology policy. Dr. Kiss's research focuses on international antitrust law and innovation policy, particularly as it relates to digital platforms. Additionally, Dr. Kiss teaches courses in antitrust law and consumer protection law at the Global Antitrust Institute of the Antonin Scalia Law School at George Mason University. Dr. Ji-hyun Lee, welcome to the Korea Society, Ji-hyun, Economic Research Lead at Amazon Web Services. Dr. Lee is a seasoned economist specializing in international economics, currently leading research on the economic impact of AWS's global operations. Her portfolio covers, among other things, the environmental and economic implications of AWS's energy investments. And Scott Jacobs, Head of Public Policy, Global Government Affairs at Coupang. Coupang is a U.S. technology and Fortune 200 company providing services in e-commerce, food delivery, streaming, and fintech. Prior to joining Coupang, Scott held senior policy roles in Amazon. He also served in the Obama administration, the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative. Moderating today's session is Tammy Overby, Senior Consul at DGA Albright Stonebridge Group and a member of the Board of Directors here at the Korea Society. Tammy brings more than 3 decades of experience working in Asia, which includes her tenure as president of the American Chamber of Commerce in Korea for 14 years, where she played a key role in advancing the U.S.-Korea Free Trade Agreement. Together, our panelists share valuable perspectives on the opportunities and complexities within Korea's tech and regulatory landscape and they will discuss policy tools that can help ensure Korea remains an attractive destination for U.S. technology investment. So we're honored to have you all with us today, and also you in the audience. So with that, let's begin. The floor is yours, Tammy.
Thanks, Tom. I'd like to thank Sojung and Sarah and the great team at the Korea Society for putting together this timely discussion. I'm delighted to have three good friends on this panel to talk about American investment in Korea, but also to approach it from the perspective of what else can the Korean government do? What advice would we give the Korean government if they want to attract even more U.S. investment? I'm going to ask each panelist to make 7 or 8 minutes of comments, and then we will go to Q&A. We've got both people online and in person. So the people in person, wave your hand. If you're online, wave your chat function, and we've got Sarah in the back keeping an eye on that. Also, I have a few questions for our panelists. There are also press in the room and press online. Because I'm going to ask you for the press, please hold your questions to the end, and Leela and I will field those questions. If you have questions specifically for AWS or Coupang, we'll take those questions and we'll direct it to their comms team. I thought it was more important to have the best people on the panel, but they don't have press authority. So I will make up stuff that will make it interesting for you, and it will be good for everyone. So we're going to start by going with Dr. Ji-hyun Lee. She and her team are responsible for looking at the economic benefits that an Amazon Web Services investment has to an economy. So Ji-hyun, starting with you. Floor is yours.
Thank you so much for Korea Society for inviting me, and thank you for the audience online and also on site. Today I walk through how much economic values AWS has added to Korea economy, categorizing it into 3 different buckets. So first bucket, so-called construction economic impact, is generated by AWS's direct investment to construct, connect, operate, and maintain data center buildings in South Korea. The second bucket, so-called downstream economic impact, is when clients, industry, across industry in South Korea adopt cloud or cloud-enabled AI, how much economic impact will be generated by adopting cloud in their existing production pipeline. Third bucket is energy efficiency improvement. So using cloud, especially hyperscalers cloud, not only limited to AWS, but also capturing all cloud service providers for operating in South Korea, how much energy productivity will be increased compared to on-premises or smaller scale data centers, and through the increased energy productivity, how much more economic values will be added to South Korean economy. So I walk through those 3 buckets, so I hope it doesn't make you too much confused. So start from the first bucket, construction economic impact. AWS invested, let me use some cheat sheet because there are many numbers that popped up and I'm not that smart to memorize all the numbers. So more than 2.04 billion US dollars since 2028 to 2022 to construct, maintain, operate data centers in Seoul, South Korea and around Seoul area. And that investment, more than $2 billion, has been generated more than $3.6 billion GDP in South Korea economy through their supply chain and through the entire eco chain. And annually, on average, more than 3,600 full-time equivalent job has been supported by this investment during the same 4-year period. In AWS, by C-level executive level, announced in 2023 that we have a plan to invest more than 5.8 billion US dollars up to 2027 in the same region, data center building and construction, operation, and maintain in South Korea. And with that more than 5.8 billion US dollars of investment of AWS, we are estimated that more than 11.2 billion GDP will be additionally added to South Korean economy. And also, on annual average, more than 12,300 jobs, FTE, will be added to South Korean economy through the same period. So this is already very obvious construction economic impact generated by direct AWS's investment for its data centers. And how about the second bucket? It's a little bit bigger concept that clients, which means across all industry, when South Koreans adopt cloud or cloud-enabled AI in their production pipeline, how much more economic benefit will be generated by increased productivity of their labors and their capital investment. So in 2023 only, by the third-party studies, this one is not capturing only AWS investment, but you can capture all cloud service providers who are operating in South Korea, how much economic benefit has been added by their operation. So in Korea, more than $8.3 billion has been already added only in 2023 once we capture one full year economic benefit. And it is $640 million has been added by cloud-enabled AI additionally on top of the previous $8.3 billion. So cloud-enabled AI service here means the AI platforms, AI services that is provided by cloud service providers only, not the entire AI industry. I just want to classify, make sure what is the classification of this economic benefit. So the whole point that I listed out all the numbers are not only by AWS's business operation in South Korea, but also given the nature of this cloud and AI industry, when clients across all industries in South Korea, from automobile industry to textile industry or even agriculture industry, when they adopt cloud and AI services in their production pipeline, it adds much more values to the economy through the supply chain. So I really hope South Korean general citizens and also policymakers or all related stakeholders can see this is really a great way to not only company, but also companies and companies by the nature of GDP, when their economic activities are all adding up, the economic value will be growing and increasing very obviously as measured in various studies. So that's something that I would like to highlight and give perspective with clear data-driven insights. And the third piece that I want to mention is this is really easily ignored or never revealed by many studies out there. So I really want to bring some highlight on this study. What is the benefit of storing data to data centers? Not in-house, small on-premises data centers, but economies of scale exist in large-scale data centers. And what is the actual benefit from the energy productivity perspective? This study answered that question by measuring how much more goods and services in dollar value can be generated using the same amount of electricity. So let's say, I want to give some example to help your understanding. Let's say entire Korean industry on average could generate $100 value of goods and services by consuming 1 megawatt per hour, a unit of electricity, before using cloud. And we're going to compare it after using cloud in their production pipeline, how much more goods and services they can generate consuming same amount of electricity. Megawatt per hour, it's a unit, but you can forget about the unit. So the data tells, on average, in Korea, 3.5 more dollar of goods and services can be generated consuming same amount of energy. We call it in term energy productivity has been increased. So using same energy resources, how much more goods and services can be generated in your economy, which means to produce same amount of goods and services, you can use less energy resources. Then, with that saved energy, the increased energy productivity, South Korea can add more than $2 billion of GDP to their economy. So this is based on the assumption, very hypothetical situation to make it easy to understand when there's a 10% increase in cloud adoption in the society, how much more energy productivity will be increased, and then as a result, how much more GDP will be generated. So let's review before I close this comment, the three buckets. So first bucket is construction economic impact by direct AWS's investment, how much job GDP has been increased. You hear all the $1 billion, right? And then second bucket is when clients across all industry in South Korea adopt cloud in their production pipeline by increased labor productivity, how much more GDP will be generated. And third bucket is energy efficiency. Energy productivity is improved, and as a result, how much more GDP will be increased. So all three different perspectives of studies and researches prove that this cloud industry and cloud-enabled AI industry will give much more opportunity, much more wealth, much more economic value added to South Korea economy. So when you walk away this room, I hope you can have one takeaway. This is a really great economic booster. Thank you.
Excellent. Well done. And now we're going to move to Scott, the head of global policy for Coupang.
Yeah, thanks, Tammy. Thanks to Tom and the Korea Society for the invitation. I suspect that this audience will have at least some familiarity with Coupang, but most do not. So appreciate the opportunity to tell our story a bit. And we're also a proud AWS customer, so nice job. I think we're sort of often colloquially referred to Coupang as the Amazon of Asia, given our large e-commerce business. We do video streaming through Coupang Play, fresh grocery delivery, restaurant delivery, and Uber Eats type business, fintechs and payments. So a lot of adjacent businesses across the entire operation. But we are, as Tammy said, a Seattle-based company. We're headquartered in the United States. We're part of the Fortune 200, Fortune 170, incorporated in Delaware. And through our subsidiaries, all in, we're active in over 190 countries and territories. And that includes 80,000 global employees based around the world. But Tammy, as you know, and as folks at the Korea Society know, that the heart of our business, the core focus of what we do, the customer-facing operations are predominantly focused in Korea and increasingly in Taiwan. And so as a result, we care deeply about Korea. We care about it as a country. We care about it as a market for business. And we think that a company like ours has a really unique role in enhancing economic, cultural, and even security ties between the two countries. And so, proud of that. We are the second largest employer in Korea. As I said, the vast majority of our employees are based in Korea behind Samsung, second largest. That's, by the way, more than the next 10 U.S. companies combined with respect to former colleagues of mine at Amazon and others. Over $6 billion in foreign direct investment Coupang is committed to since our founding. We just announced not too long ago another $2 billion in capital expenditure investments that'll run through 2026. And so very focused on ongoing investment and growth in the country. That's the vast 30% or so of U.S. foreign direct investment totally has been generated by Coupang. And so a really important bridge role that we play there. And by the way, I should add, 95% of our fulfillment center workers, these are our big warehouses and delivery stations across the country, are based outside of Seoul.
Oh.
And so there is a real unique economic and I think social impact component to what we're doing. 50% of our fulfillment center workers are women as well. So we still care very deeply about gender equity and women's economic empowerment, big focus of what we're doing. And the other engine that we're generating is production from small and medium-sized enterprises. Over 230,000 SMEs use Coupang to sell to customers throughout the country. Again, 75% of which are based outside of Seoul. So the economic impact, I think, is pretty robust. And on the cultural side, I think there's a great story to tell there. We are proud to, through Coupang Play, bringing tons of American content exclusively to Korea. Just announced a big partnership with HBO. We are the exclusive provider of NFL football for customers in Korea. We were last year proud to bring the first Major League Baseball game, regular season game, to Seoul for the MLB Seoul Series, featuring the Dodgers and the Padres. And so that's a big part of what and who we are, and proud also that what we're doing is creating exports into the country. So truly, obviously I'm biased, but it is an amazing world-class e-commerce and retail operation that we continue to invest in. And folks who are familiar with the business will know just one anecdote about Coupang, our rocket delivery guarantee, where if you go on the site and you order virtually anything before midnight, it'll be on your doorstep by 7 a.m.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt. My sister lives in Korea. Whenever I'm there at 10 p.m., I'll open the fridge. There's no cream for my coffee. She goes on Coupang. It's actually there by 5 a.m., but, I'm not going to quibble. The other thing about Coupang that as an American I love, so many small and medium-sized American companies use your platform to access the 50 million consumers in Korea.
Yeah,
well
for
done,
sure.
my friend.
I was just going to say the same is true for economic impact with respect to U.S. exports. And so roughly about $4 billion in annual sales of U.S. goods from our fulfillment centers in Riverside, California, and just outside Seattle, daily shipments to Seoul, where we're facilitating all sorts of trade between the two countries. More than 10,000 brands are using Coupang as their exclusive channel to reach customers in Korea. Everybody from Apple to Clorox to P&G and even smaller companies like Wickles Pickles in Alabama. And so, that is a big part of our business, of who we are, how we're contributing to the American economy. We are the number one U.S. seller in American avocados, American grapefruits, American lemons, number two in American oranges, number three in U.S. beef. And so the agriculture components are our key focus of who we are as a business. And from a public policy perspective, a big focus for me and for our team is how do we proactively engage constructively with governments, both countries, to provide and enhance trade flows and cultural ties between the two countries. And that is a key focus for us. And, we're eager to be working with other like-minded partners who share our vision, want to be focused on enhancing the trade and economic partnership between the U.S. and Korea, and looking forward to more of the discussion.
Well, we will come back to you on that. We know that President Trump is laser focused on countries with a deficit. South Korea's deficit has significantly increased over the last 4 years. I would argue that a big chunk of that deficit is intermediate goods, going from Korean companies in Korea to their manufacturing facilities in the United States, Hyundai Motors, Kia, Samsung, SK Hynix. But still, that deficit is an issue. And companies like Scott's, by being a great platform, and the more we can sell American products on that platform, that helps lower the deficit. So you're a patriot, Scott. And now, last and certainly not least, I'd like to go to Leela, who has done just some incredible work, research on online platforms, competition policy, and how governments regulate them. And with that, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tammy. Good afternoon. Thank you to the Korea Society for organizing this and hosting this inspiring conversation. And also thanks for the audience for inspiring us by your presence. I would like to build on what Jihan and Scott just told, and build on this picture on the Korean digital success story. I will talk about four key issues. The first is Korea's multiple platform regulatory proposals and how they impact digital companies in Korea and outside of Korea. Secondly, I would like to tie in some lessons we learned from the European Union's Digital Markets Act and the legislative process behind it. And of course, this leads to the third point, which will be the broader perspectives of the South Korea-US relationship and the broader geopolitical aspects of it. And the fourth point will be the future, the way forward. So let me begin by drawing conclusions from what Scott and Jihan just told. As we could see, there is no market failure in the South Korean digital ecosystem. Companies and also consumers are benefiting from the current regulatory framework. So as a general principle, we usually say that regulation is only needed if there is a market failure. But because there is no market failure in the ecosystem, as we could hear in the data, we can say that South Korea does not need any digital company regulations, digital competition regulations. So despite this success, the current policy environment is very stormy, as we can see. As of late 2024, there were 19 pending proposals at the National Assembly for the same platform regulation. Most of these are so-called ex-ante regulatory proposals, which intend to preemptively regulate certain behavior before harm would occur. They are mostly inspired by the European Union's Digital Markets Act. That's why it's going to be important to talk about it a little bit later. They may differ in certain details, but most of them are trying to restrict or prohibit certain otherwise pro-competitive behavior and conduct, such as bundling, tying, self-preferencing, different data usages, and so on. This patchwork of proposals will present two major concerns. First is that it creates a legal uncertainty for companies who try to comply and invest in the country. And secondly, it shows the lack of a clear policy vision about the future of competition policy. Among these proposals, there's one that is slightly different from the others. It's called Partial Amendment Bill, introduced by the KFTC, Korea's Trade Commission, and it's wrapped in an ex-post amendment, but technically it's not much of a difference compared to the ex-ante proposals that are also pending at the National Assembly. Why? The reason why it's not different is because all of these digital competition regulations are focusing on the largest players. Based on their thresholds, they are trying to curb the dominant platforms operators, and it is leading to capturing companies like Naver, Kakao, Apple, Google, Bamin. So some of them are focusing only on American companies. Some of them are also on domestic players. In addition to this, it restricts practices, just as I mentioned, like self-preferencing, tying, bundling, and so on. So at this point, it is not about the form, whether it's an ex-ante or an ex-post kind of regulation or amendment. It's more about the content of these regulations. So we can say that this is going to bring us to the next practical question. How did we get here, and why the European Union's DMA matters? As I mentioned, the DMA, the European DMA, is the flagship of certain ex-ante type of regulations, and some countries try to refer to it as a gold standard that should be followed by other jurisdictions, such as South Korea. To understand the controversy around the DMA, we have to distinguish between three concepts: the effect, the intent, and the motive. So if you see the effect of the law is that it's disproportionately affect American companies when it comes to the European DMA, because it targets the largest so-called gatekeepers. When we see the intent behind the regulation, we can highlight that it was designed to achieve this effect. But if we see the motive, we cannot argue that the underlying purpose of the law was to punish American companies or to make it seem like it is an anti-American law. So why is it important for Korea is that if we if we see that all these pending proposals, these platform proposals in Korea, may be perceived by the United States as it's happening in the European Union and regarding the European Union's DMA. So KFTC officials usually claim that their bill, the partial amendment bill I mentioned, is not discriminatory towards American companies because they also focus on domestic players like Kakao or Naver. But it doesn't matter in the practice whether it's discriminatory or not if it's perceived to be discriminatory towards American companies. And when it comes to policy and trade diplomacy, the perception matters more than anything else. So we have already seen that how it's playing out in Washington, D.C. Already during the previous administration, Representative Carol Miller was introducing a bill, U.S. Republic of Korea Digital Trade Enforcement Act, which is going to be reintroduced during the next week. It's going to introduce certain opportunities for the USA to take diplomatic or other actions against countries who are adopting laws that seem to be disadvantageous towards American companies. So this leads us to the fourth point, which is going to be also the final point of this talk, is that the implications of these regulatory measures are going further than legal technical issues. They are affecting the broader geopolitical and bilateral relations of South Korea and the United States. South Korea and the United States are not just commercial partners, as we know, but strategic allies. And they share not just security commitments, the democratic values as well. So if a regulation or regulatory proposals are seen either fairly or unfairly as targeting US companies, it's not going to be perceived well by the current US administration. And it's also third layer of this geopolitical tension is that it's seen as it helps China because these regulations are not targeting Chinese companies. They are under the radar of these thresholds. So all this brings us to the broader question about what model should South Korea follow, whether the DMA is a gold standard or not. And one particularly important argument is that the DMA is not a gold standard because there are several other pathways towards regulation on non-regulation exists worldwide. We just published a report yesterday about the different regimes available in other jurisdictions, and we compare and contrast these regimes to each other. But I would like to highlight some alternatives. For example, Taiwan is not pursuing a digital regulation, but they are focusing on their ex-post enforcement because they see it is working out well. Of course, there are alternatives like Canada, who is amending the existing ex-post system. Or, for example, the UK that adopted digital markets regulation, but in a slightly different way. They adopted codes of conduct for each companies, and they also offer pro-competitive justifications for the companies if they want to explain that their behavior is actually pro-competitive and pro-consumer. So a big question for South Korea is what model they should follow, and in my opinion, you should follow your own model, your own existing model that's proved to be a well-functioning solution for competition issues.
Thank you. And one thing I notice when I look at Europe and the DMA is when I try to think of who are some European innovative online platform companies, I can't think of any. But when I think of Korea, I think of Naver, Kakao. When I think of the US, I think of Coupang, Amazon, Meta, Google, Microsoft. So I guess my point for my Korean friends is if Korea wants to continue to support innovation, it's important that you regulate in a way. Before I go to questions, does anyone want to add anything to what you've just heard?
Yeah, I mean,
Please.
with respect to the platform legislation, I mean, of course, we're tracking it closely, have concerns about how it's designed and who it targets, and frankly, the broader impact it'll have on the relationship between the U.S. and Korea, particularly where the tensions on trade issues are quite hot these days. I mean, overall, we want to promote stability, and concern that this could quickly spiral into something that is seen as a real irritant. Just yesterday, the Trump administration released its annual national trade estimate, its report to Congress on various barriers to trade that U.S. companies are facing throughout their operations globally. And this issue was specifically highlighted as a concern. And it's a step change from what we saw from the last administration, which didn't include some of these acute digital trade issues. And I think the Trump administration has been clear. Jameson Greer, the ambassador over at USTR, has been clear that this sort of what they view as harassment and disadvantaging companies is not going to be acceptable anymore. And again, we're worried about the law, but more broadly worried about the ripple effects, and don't want to see this turn into something that impacts trade flows on both sides. And frankly, the platform legislation is, I think, just one of the latest examples of this tendency to have protectionist policies that promote domestic champions, domestic companies. As I said, Coupang is, for all intents and purposes, a Korean company, given the focus that we've had on the market and the investments that we've made. And so really worried about that. And, Leela mentioned the Korea Fair Trade Commission as promoting a specific viewpoint on competition policy, and really worried, frankly, about the KFTC in general continuing to irritate the relationship. And as it has been publicly reported for months, they have a long history of targeting American companies. Google, Netflix, Apple have all been subject to pretty intense harassment and raids of their offices, investigations that don't appear to be aligned with how other jurisdictions are pursuing similar type of conduct. And so worried about that, and just want to see tension simmer if we can help it.
You raised such an important point. We're in a new world with the Trump administration, and his administration has been quite clear that he feels American companies have not been treated fairly, and that they're going to go after countries that treat American companies unfairly. And unfortunately, I think we have some clear evidence here that that's happening. So with that, I have a couple of questions, but let me see anybody in the audience if you want to. We have 20 minutes for questions. And while y'all are composing, let me throw a question from Charles Willow, an online question. How would the Korean tech industry weather the storm created by the Trump administration of the U.S.? Trump is seeking otherwise to attract foreign investments back to the U.S. How do y'all think Korea is going to do under this new world?
I think it's going to be a challenge, to say the least. We are waiting. I think the whole world is waiting to see exactly what sort of announcements the president makes tomorrow about his reciprocal tariffs. There's a lot of rumor about what exactly that might look like, whether it'll be country-specific, sector-specific. Will there be a universal basic tariff that's applied to all countries, including trading partners with FTAs? So I think there's a big unknown. But clearly, this is an administration that has a point of view on trade. Is focused on reshoring manufacturing to the United States, and so I think the Koreans have been savvy and wise and proactively engaging during what is admittedly a difficult political dynamic in Seoul these days, but nevertheless, I think have shown a lot of leadership in flying into DC and seeking meetings with this administration and searching for ways to pursue exemptions that don't directly target their companies, both in the digital space and more traditionally. So maybe we'll know more tomorrow, but for now, it's a big question. And plus, Tammy, you taught me to get out of the prediction business a long time ago.
I've been wrong so many times, I no longer predict. But I am very eager to see what tomorrow brings. We saw last week auto tariffs, 25%. And last Monday, the Hyundai chairman, Chung Wee-sun, was in Washington at the White House announcing a $21 billion investment. On Wednesday of last week, he was in Georgia opening the brand new electric vehicle factory that they started that investment 2.5 years ago, but that investment is now online. And then Monday afternoon, President Trump applied 25% tariff on all imported vehicles. That's also going to hit General Motors. GM Korea is the third largest auto manufacturer in South Korea, and 88% of the vehicles that GM Korea makes are imported back to the U.S. They're also hit with that 25% tariff. So it's a whole new ball game, a whole new day. Korea's in a tough position, but this is a sector where we could help with the deficit. The more online services Korea buys from the United States, because services do count. I'm not sure everybody is aware of what they are, but the U.S. has a huge services surplus with South Korea. And the more Coupang and Amazon Web Services and Google and others can operate in Korea, that will help us lower our deficit. Anyone else want to add anything? Next question. What tax incentives do U.S. tech companies want the South Korean government to offer that might help you boost your investment? Is there anything they could offer on the tax side that might make AWS say, we're going to put a lot more money there?
I have some opinion actually, but
Okay.
observing the PR
Okay,
policy,
for any specific, my apologies.
Yeah.
I broke my cardinal rule. Don't ask the companies directly.
I'll just say this. I mean, I think a level playing field would be the right place to start.
A level playing field.
I think, clearly, as I said, there is a tendency to promote the activities of domestically based companies and to enable their growth at the expense of others. And I'm not talking just about Coupang, but there are many.
And we're not
American
just talking about the
companies.
online.
Exactly.
We see that in other sectors.
So, and I think as American investors think about South Korea as an attractive destination for investment, there needs to be perhaps a rethink about some of those long-standing traditions. Now, that is a tall order, and there's a lot of there's more expertise in this room about why that is and how the design of the influence of some of the companies that operate in Korea have had such outsized influence over the years. But I think, as has been said, Korea is an incredibly innovative country that has promoted its brand through various companies for decades, and we want to continue to encourage that. And I think it's a mistake, frankly, to consider some of these policies as zero sum with respect to their domestic champions. And frankly, we work very closely with Samsung and LG and SK and many other cable businesses in Korea. And so I think, tax incentives are one thing, but let's create an environment that is conducive for investment and it's fair.
I echo that. And for those of you who haven't been following Korea for 40 years as I have, Korea, the economy, the Miracle on the Han River, was started as a command-controlled economy, where the Korean government really, back in those days, in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, the Korean government chose the winners and losers. And then they funneled money, subsidies, tax investment, everything to help those champions. and made one of the strongest economies in the world. Depending on whose numbers, South Korea is the 10th, 11th largest economy in the world. And then in 1996, they joined OECD, and they did it, which is considered the rich economies club. And then some of you may remember it in 97, 98, South Korea got hit by a financial crisis, which my Korean friends called the IMF crisis. And I begged them, please don't call it that. My friends at the IMF get mad. They didn't have a crisis. But it's simply nomenclature. When a Korean says the IMF crisis, I know which economic crisis. They're talking about 97, 98. But then in 2006, the U.S. and South Korea negotiated a comprehensive high standard free trade agreement, which is hugely significant because the U.S. only has 3 FTAs, free trade agreements, in Asia. We have one with Singapore, with Australia, and our most up-to-date one in Asia is with South Korea. And that really was, to me, a seminal point where the Korean government recognized it needs to be a level playing field now. We no longer need to protect Korean companies. Part of the reason is because Korean companies are doing so well. You may notice that Hyundai Motors and Kia often sell more than the American brand companies here. They're beating us in our own markets. So they no longer need those protections. But sometimes the regulators really haven't caught up and haven't gotten that message. When Walmart opened their first store in Korea in 2006, Korean press were saying, this is the end of mom and pops in Korea. But I was in Korea when the last Walmart shuttered their store. Walmart no longer has any stores in South Korea. Costco does. Costco's doing quite well. But Walmart buys from South Korea. They source electronics from there, but they no longer have a store because they couldn't compete. It's a very different market. So we've seen the evolution, and I believe Korea is really at an important inflection point where America has a president that is very clearly views other countries as unfairly treating us. And he's going to punish those countries quite harshly. So I think South Korea's got a unique opportunity, but it's a very short window. Tomorrow morning we'll find out what the reciprocal tariffs are, but we're hopeful that South Korea can remove some of these long-term irritants, and regulate their market in a way that helps them. One of my concerns about the DMA Act, the Digital Marketing Act, is that it will chill innovation. It will hurt innovation in Korea, where Naver and Kakao need that innovation, that innovative ecosystem. It'll also hurt the small and medium-sized companies in Korea who use these platforms every day, who need those platforms to get access to the 50 million consumers. So let me turn to the audience. Questions? Tom? The microphone is coming so the folks online can hear him.
Well, I found this very informative. I have many questions, but I'll just stick to one. So generally speaking, in the U.S., when we're talking about deregulation, it tends to be the Republican Party that favors deregulation. The Democrats favor regulation and big government because government knows best. In Korea, are there any does the conservatives or even within the Democratic Party in Korea, are there any strong proponents of liberalization and to, this fair access and low market barriers? And is there any outspoken leader in the political system in Korea favoring deregulation?
That's a political question, and I'm going to jump in, and y'all feel free to add if you want. Both political parties, the progressives, the DPK, and the conservatives, the People Power Party, PPP, they're not as principled on the issues. It's more about regions and personalities. So I wouldn't say one party is more pro-liberalization than another. In fact, it was the progressives, No Mu-yeon, who launched the Chorus FTA. Now, it was the conservative Lee Myung-bak who pushed it across the finish line in Korea's National Assembly. So I think both parties have supported liberalization. And frankly, acting President, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo was U.S. ambassador when we were selling the Chorus FTA. And he used to say to me regularly that, the economic crisis of 97, 98, the IMF crisis, it didn't last long enough. We needed another year or two to make even more reforms because the way he phrased it, Korea lives in a very rough, competitive neighborhood. You've got Japan on one side and China on the other. And China moving up the value chain very quickly. The only way Korea can stay active and in the game is to stay ahead in research and development. Samsung, SK Hynix, SK On, your EV battery companies, your biotech. Korea is, and shipbuilding, you're incredibly competitive, but Korea has to stay competitive, and it's in both parties' interest to do that. But I think right now, again, the challenge with we will find out Friday morning at 11 what the Constitutional Court decision is on President Yoon's impeachment. But we need that decision resolved, and we need political stability. President Trump is not going to deal with an acting president. South Korea needs a new needs to answer that question and move on quickly so they can start negotiating. All the other countries, Prime Minister Shiba was here a couple weeks ago. Modi was here. So other countries are getting in and trying to negotiate with the new administration. Anyone that want to add anything on politics? No predictions. On Friday, the right decision will happen, I'm sure.
What do you think will happen, Tammy?
We will know on Friday. That's what will happen. Okay, another question. On top of Korea's regulatory framework, the policy measures and incentive, Kim Jae-bum thinks that mutual trust matters first. And I don't know if y'all followed, but Korea has recently, by the U.S. Department of Energy, been listed as a sensitive state. Yeah. And he said, his question is, how can South Korea be freed from the stigma of a sensitive state? And that really is a trust issue.
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on that. I think, there are all sorts of...
Well, how could they, in your sector, what would be some good signs that could restore trust or help?
Yeah, well, not to be redundant, but I think, the regulation that's targeting, companies that are not domiciled in Korea is clearly an ongoing irritant. And so, we were fortunate to be invited to a discussion that Tom convened several weeks ago with various members of the National Assembly who were coming through New York and Washington and meeting with counterparts in the government. And that was what we discussed, was, look for ways to find off-ramps to some of the unfair barriers, or maybe they're not perceived to be unfair locally, but nevertheless, regulations that are at best appear to be targeting certain types of businesses. And so I think, look, there's going to be a negotiation. I think that's already begun. Secretary Lutnick, Ambassador Greer, others have met with senior officials in the existing government. If and when there's a change, we'll have to maybe start that process over. But I think coming in with a commitment to play the game that has changed now, and investing in the United States, and committing to no longer pursue certain types of legislation that have been identified as unfair barriers to trade and irritants in the relationship. And so, I think that has to be the strategic approach that not just Korea, but frankly any country that's negotiating. But I have sympathy, frankly, because clearly there was a lot of effort put into the Chorus negotiations. I was actually in the building at the time, and you mentioned autos, Tammy. I mean, just it has a knock-on effect where you think you've made a a deal that protects certain equities. And I think a lot of countries now have to kind of rethink what does it mean when we're agreeing to certain removal of tariffs and non-tariff barriers. Will that stick long term?
Is that enough?
And again, we'll have a lot more clarity, I hope, tomorrow about what this new tariff world will look like, and then from there, countries, including Korea, will have an ability to engage. I think Korea is well positioned, just given how proactive. My view, coming up from DC, is that the Korean government has been one of the most engaged governments with this new administration since January 20, and that's a good start.
I would echo that. Korea has a lot of what President Trump wants. When President Yoon called to congratulate him on being elected last November, it was President Trump-elect who raised, let's work together on shipbuilding. So South Korea has technology knowledge that the U.S. needs. Semiconductors, you help us with our semiconductor supply chain. A lot of your manufacturing investment is helping us revitalize American manufacturing. I'd like to point out two other issues. Google Maps in South Korea does not have full functionality. Now, when I talk to my Korean friends, they say it's for security reasons. But when I talk to my friends in Taiwan and Israel, Google Maps, who are have similar security concerns, Google Maps has full functionality there. The only country on earth where it doesn't, that they're actually trying to market it. It probably doesn't in North Korea, but I don't think that's a hot market for Google. but South Korea is. So that, to me, that's a problem they could resolve very easily. There's an American food technology company that's been trying to get this technology approved by the Ministry of Food and Drug Safety for almost 20 years. And this technology is approved in Japan, the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, but not in South Korea. Even though Hanu beef sellers want the technology, it is sustainable. It will lower their costs. But there still have not been, and they've been given no science or evidence-based reasons why. So I think these are just a couple of small examples that where the Korean government could make some, I think, fairly easy changes that would be good for Korea, but would also show the Trump administration we're serious. And again, we're seeing a very active Korea Fair Trade Commission that appears to be really, I mean, they target Korean firms as well, but I think when I look industry by industry, it looks like the American companies are getting extra special attention, and I think that doesn't look like a level playing field. So these are areas where I think Korea could help itself. And I see we are right at 1 o'clock, but does anybody have a last burning question or? Yes, sir, please. A microphone is coming to you. Sure.
Would you mind giving a couple examples of Google's functionality that's not available in South Korea?
So there used to be that game with Google Maps where you would find the, do you know the name of it? Where that little, everybody in Korea had to go to the East Coast and they could catch a signal from Japan's Google. What do you know? There was a toy,
The Pokemon thing.
Pokemon. It was the Pokemon thing. And my sister lives in Seoul. My nephew was 10 years old. My sister had to drive 3.5 hours to the East Coast so that he could get the little icons to pop on his phone. So of course, I talk to the Korean government regularly. I'm like, why does my sister have to do this? Why can't full functionality work in Korea? And we were always told it was for security reasons. So again, I did research. Taiwan has a very delicate security situation with China, the People's Republic of China right next door. Israel also has very serious security concerns, but full functionality. They can do Pokemon hunts in their country. And for me, I use Google Maps everywhere. It works a little bit in Korea, but not It doesn't tell me how long it's going to take. Like when I get in a Kakao taxi, it won't tell me how long. So, and again, the challenge is they're using a reason that no one else on Earth is using. Where I think the time has passed for Korea unique or Korea specific. For Koreans used to say we're special, we're unique, we need this special understanding. Korea can compete with anyone. They no longer need that protection.
Oh,
please.
Yeah, a South Korean nationality, currently in this space representing AWS. I know many things about South Korea, but unfortunately, I'm not PR person. I'm an economist, so I'm not supposed to answer some very insightful questions that Tammy brought up. So personally, sorry, but if you want to talk about more during our after session, then I'm happy to talk. One thing that I want to make a comment is the three report that I mentioned, the first economic impact study, all studies are on public available. So when you type Google, like I should not mention Google, my competitor's name, but Google Economic Impact Study, you can see not only Korea Economic Impact Study, but also all around the world, other countries' economic impact study. And you can compare the numbers of GDP or how much investment has made by AWS. The reason why I'm bringing up is all around the world, countries are developing and adding economic values, open their market for cloud and AI services. As a nationality of South Korean, I hope South Korea would not lose the opportunity to boost their own economy by accepting this investment. Also, the second and third report, Telecom Service Advisory, is the consulting firm who conduct the study. So it's all public around the world. Globally, data points are there. So also look at the numbers too. I hope in 10 years later, when we talk about the same discussion, same topic, I hope to see South Korea has added much more values to their economy following right pro-cloud, pro-AI policy. Thank you.
And Pokemon.
And they can do Pokemon. And with that,
Tammy, I'd
sorry.
like to just,
Go ahead.
I do have one question I wanted to ask Ji-Yeon, but I wanted to make a comment on the special entry list. It's something I'm following for a project I'm working on. I'm not an authority, but Yonhap reported that Foreign Minister Jo Tae-yeol noted that this was not a sweeping finding by the U.S. government. It was
a
pretty
couple
narrow.
of
Department of
yeah.
Energy, and it involved a breach of protocol on how, I guess, sensitive information can be exchanged between
Right.
researchers in Korea and researchers in the U.S. We should also mention, yes, you have all these, the black sheep in this area, countries on this list, but historically, you've also had countries such as Israel on the list and also Taiwan.
Yeah.
So it doesn't prevent exchange of information and research between the two countries. However, I guess it's a yellow
issue.
flag or something
Yeah.
like that.
But our acting ambassador, Jo Yoon, has confirmed that it will not affect the U.S.'s ability to share
That's what I'm getting at.
sensitive
I don't want to
information.
minimize the importance of trust, but
Yeah.
putting more perspective on it. But for Ji-Yeon, a very basic question. I mean, Amazon Web Services has invested more than $5 billion in data centers in Korea. Who are your competitors? Are you the only one doing this, or are there Korean Jabil building these data centers?
Yeah, all American tech companies that you know, the name that Tammy listed
Meta,
out, are
yeah.
operating in South
Google.
Korea as well. And then South Korea has their own data center companies. And like Shirley touched upon their regulatory policies, I'm the one who produced the economic impact studies for all countries globally. And out of all countries, I can pick two countries that have very specific regulatory policies in the world, very unique two countries. That's Korea and Japan. And you can see the numbers of GDP generated also affected by those regulatory policies. It's really correlated. So I just want to put it out there to give some opportunity to think about it. Is it really helpful for our economy to set boundaries, too high boundaries to protect our economy? But actually, it turns out that the data tells us it doesn't protect your economy. It will operate opposite way.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
So are we finished? We went to overtime. That's great. I love overtime. I'd like to thank the panelists for coming here, Leela, Scott, and Ji Yun. And thank you, Tammy. I met Tammy years ago during the IMF crisis, probably in Korea.
You were
so
Moody.
It's good we've remained friends and colleagues over this long period. This is a fascinating and I think really important topic, and it's the first time we've done this at the Korea Society, as I mentioned in the beginning. So we hope to be doing similar presentations like this. In fact, we might have the Invest Korea Commissioner come here in June to give a talk as well.
Cool.
So thank you all for coming here today, and hope we'll see you again
And
soon. One last thing, always consider membership in the Korea Society. It doesn't
Oh, I'm
cost that
sorry. You
much,
shouldn't have been
actually.
allowed in if you're not a member.
No,
As a patron member, I think everybody needs to join.
So just take that into account. Thank you all.
And if there were press in the room who want to talk to Leela and I, we can speak freely, and we can send questions to Coupang and AWS, and their comms teams will get back to you.
So, yes, just one last plug from us. We have a Startup Scene annual forum coming up in April 22nd at City headquarters. So, it's another one of our keystone initiatives here at the Korea Society. So, if you're interested, please find me, or you can please refer to the poster in the back as well. So, thank you to all our panelists and Tammy for moderating today. Thank you for everyone in person and virtual who has participated today. For in-person, I think we'll conclude with networking and light lunches in the back. So please help me give a hand for our panelists today.
Thank you.